food for thought. Ladies and gentlemen, with great pleasure, I am introducing our next speaker who will be sharing her experiences on the topic of rights for minorities. Minority rights cover protection of existence, protection from discrimination and persecution, protection and promotion of identity, and participation in political life. Franziska Antoinette Hancox was born on 8th August in 1968 in Cape Town and moved to Namibia in 1978, where she completed schooling. She is married with 2 daughters. Mrs. Hancox started her educational career with UNISA, where she obtained the Baccalaureus Procurationis in 1994. She was admitted as an attorney of the High Court of Namibia in March 1996. In January 2000, she was admitted as solicitor of the Supreme Court of England and Wales after passing the qualifying exams in London. She attended and passed the Human Rights Program in June 2000 of Oxford University. Trained in arbitrator skills, qualified as surveyancer of the High Court of Namibia, and studied justice. Oh, I'm not good in the legal field. I'm a human resources person, so please excuse me. She studied in Finland, and she obtained her LLM in human rights in 2017 through UNISA. Since August 2000, Mrs. Hancox has been coordinator and legal practitioner of the Human Rights and Constitutional Unit of the Legal Assistance Center. And I want to read the mission statement of the LAC, which is as follows. The Legal Assistance Center, being a public interest law center, strives to make the law more accessible to those with least access through education, law reform research, litigation, legal advice, representation, and lobbying, with the ultimate aim of creating and maintaining a human rights culture in Namibia. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mrs. Toni Hancox, who will be speaking about rights of minorities.
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is, please not Franziska. Toni is my name, thank goodness. There's our first slide. I wanted to say thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. And I'm very happy to see people so engaged with what it is we are trying to do. I'm going to be speaking about the rights of minorities, but before I do that, because I have the mic, I want to say that I recognize and acknowledge Professor Turtemeyer. He was the one that contacted me first, so he has done very much, or did very much, for contributions towards Namibian society. So his friends, his loved ones, his colleagues, please, my condolences. Then, I'm allowed to say Natalie, yes? Yes, first names. Thank you very much for having me here as well, for inviting me, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. I really appreciate that too. I hope that we can work together a bit more. I think last night was the first time that we really sat down and spoke. Harold, the Forum of German-Speaking Namibians. You did say it's going to be just Namibians from now on, not Namibians as in Finn, I don't know, you decide. Okay, thanks very much to the speakers before me. John, I wish I had you as a lecturer when I was doing my degree. I think you would have probably been thrown in jail, never to be seen again. Toivo, is he here? Yes. I was very sad to hear that you struggled to get quality guests, because I have been a guest on your show a few times, but yeah, normally you asking the questions. And today you got to be asked questions. Right, so let me start. If I look at that face there, and I'm looking at that little baby over there, you know, it has to really hit you right in the heart. No? These are our people. Jimmy Carter said, "The measure of a society is found in how they treat their weakest and most helpless citizens." And surely that must be the San in our context. The term San, it collectively refers to many different subgroups, which often have very little in common, believe it or not. They speak different languages, different cultural contexts, and so on. They don't like it that we use the term San. They prefer to be called by their own subgroup. So you would have the queer people, the, say it nicely, Aikom people. I can never really, yes, that's it. So, but I'm going to use the San as a collective. Hopefully you will forgive me for that. Okay. Oh, I'm supposed to use this thing. Yes. Our late president always said, Namibian house, no? Nobody should be left out. Well, let's have a look at that. That is a queer dwelling in the informal settlement in Katima. The question was, or my topic was, are minority rights still observed in Namibia? Well, let's just very quickly respond to that. They are not now, and they never have been. Not since Jan van Riebeeck landed in Cape Town. Was it 1652? I think, yes. They have never been respected. We have very much left the San people out. There is historical prejudice against the San communities. The San were the trackers for the SADF and the SWAT-F during the border war, during the fight for independence. They speak Afrikaans. They look different. The San were free and happy about having a government of their own when independence came, with a constitution for all. But apart from a new political regime, independence didn't change much for San or for their communities. The San are the first peoples of Namibia. They walked this land long before any of us. They are an indigenous people, and they deserve our respect and to be able to live in dignity as promised by the Namibian Constitution. All right, now you're going to have to bear with me because I'm going to do the legal part of it, but I'll try and get through this very quickly, and then we can talk about other stuff. I wanted to put out there what rights there are, where the rights of the San come from, and what we should be looking at when we look at the rights of the San. So, very short historical context of our Constitution. I'm sure you all know that after the Second World War, the world said never again will these atrocities happen. So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was conceived. It's not binding, but it is accepted as the core of all other human rights agreements. Together with the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, they form the International Bill of Human Rights. There's a provision in our Constitution that says these covenants actually are directly enforced, can be directly enforced in our law. That is why they are very important. And I would suggest that you all read them, because those are rights we're all supposed to have, just by the way. So the summary, the San are protected by our Constitution and by these two human rights covenants. Okay, what does our Constitution say? Chapter 3, it's peremptory. The provisions there are peremptory. You can't turn away from them. You know, people often say, it's a nice to have, or, you know, we need to work towards it. No, that's not true. Chapter 3 is our basic human rights for every single person within Namibia. Article 10, let's just think about it in the context of the San. Article 10, equality and freedom from discriminations. Most definitely not. 19, culture. Every person shall be entitled, not protected, entitled to enjoy, practice, profess, maintain, and promote their culture, language, tradition, or religion. Entitled. So that means it's a positive thought. They should be entitled to do that. And then my favorite, Article 8, respect for human dignity. as far as I'm concerned, that is overarching, okay? So you cannot live in dignity if you don't have a home, or if you don't have water to drink, clean water, or if you don't have ablution. So never mind any of the other things. Article 8 is the big one for me. And not everybody believes me, but that is what I think. Then we have some provisions. I really don't want to do too much of this. In Article 1 of the ICCPR, the One International Covenant, speaks to that all peoples may freely dispose of their natural wealth, resources without prejudice, etc. So it's all kind of, they're all pretty much the same. Article 27 says, maybe I can have a look at that one. There it is. In those states in which ethnic, religious, or linguistic minorities exist, people belonging to such minorities shall not be denied the right, okay, in community with other members, to enjoy their own culture, to profess and practice their own religion, or to use their own language. I don't want to say, I want to change the not be denied to proactively supported, because that's really what it's about. It shouldn't be a negative term, it should be a positive term. Like I said, read these instruments really and speak about them, because those are our rights, and we are entitled to them. The last thing that is part of the legal bit is the UNDRIP, United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and they have a whole list of things there that it protects. So our government signed it. It's not binding, but if you sign something, then one would accept that you agree with the premises. I think it speaks for itself. The right to self-determination means that everyone can freely pursue your development, your cultural development, your social, economic development, without any interference of any kind. The right to be recognized as distinct peoples, I believe we all want that in our lives. Free, prior, and informed consent, we'll get to that a little bit later. And the right to be free from discrimination. Okay, so basically I have now bored you, and now we're going to move a little bit further. Okay, the San reside in a number of different places in Namibia. Some live in conservancies like the Nyai Nyai and Najana Conservancy. Some live in national parks like Bwabwata, and some live in urban areas. I shouldn't actually have put that on yet. So before independence, almost half of all San in Namibia were generational farm workers or family members of farm workers. And then, after the introduction of the Labour Act in '92, the farmers started to retrench their workers, and the introduction of the minimum wage in 2003 exacerbated this situation. Therefore, I just wanted to make a note when we spoke about it earlier, Benita, and I think, yeah, John, we were also chatting about minimum wage. Just be very careful, you know. Yes, there is the Labour Act, there is a Labour Commissioner, protections, but that doesn't mean that people will not take advantage. We know during the COVID times, many domestic workers lost their homes, their work and their, yeah. So
there are minimum wages in agriculture, in commercial agriculture.
Okay, that too. All I'm saying though is we must be very careful, because it is of concern. Sometimes people can't afford to pay more, you know, so that is concerning. Most of the San who are not living on commercial farms live in the communal areas, or on resettlement farms, or in the informal settlement of Epako in Gubabis. You'll see there's a quote of what someone said there. Whole families have been evicted from these farms. You must have read about it in the newspapers and seen it. The whole family with Sak en Pak, or German it's probably also Sak und Pak, yeah? Everything, we just put you on the side of the road and just, I mean, come on. How is this possible? They live in these farm corridors. So there, a quote, poverty. After independence, the wages were improved, and the farmer could not afford to have a lot of workers on the farm. And they chased away the San people. Before independence, even the young San boys could make some income by opening gates for the farmer when he was visiting the camp posts. And at the end of the month, he would buy him clothes and also give him money. That's all gone now. This is what someone in the Epako informal settlement said. Poverty is common among the San, and it is most often associated with a dearth of meaningful employment. They don't have these opportunities in the remote areas where they live. There's a high degree of illiteracy, and obviously there's a lot of reason for that in terms of their education, which I will get to later. When they do find work, the remuneration is normally very low. So most of them actually, the majority of San households, they rely on the old age pensions that they get and food aid when it is provided. It's a difficult life, a very difficult life for them. Education. The term inclusive loses its meaning for the San. They lack really access to schools. When they do attend, they face insurmountable financial barriers. They can't afford to buy the requirements that is needed for school. They cannot pay the uniforms that they need. Now, there is a provision that they can go to school without that. However, as you see, this poor child says here, you know, when they go to school with people from other tribes, they see the other children with cell phones, nice clothes. This is the main reason for dropping out. They are ashamed because they are teased and laughed at. And this poor child here, I get goosebumps when I see this. We can all be poor together. Surely that cannot be what we wanted at independence. They don't have cultural education. They are not provided with that. The history that they are taught has got absolutely nothing to do with them. You know, so there's really nothing that tempts them back to school, if I can put it that way. It's far away. They used to have mobile schools, which in itself is already, you can think, not really the perfect situation for anybody to learn, a conducive situation. They are not taught in their mother tongue. I absolutely forgive that, because I can understand that must be very difficult to do, in particular because the different San groups also speak different languages. They can't pay for transport. You know, all of these things. It always breaks my heart. Some years back, our then Minister of Education said there was really, really bad results at school. And she said, yeah, even if you have to sleep under the bridge and learn there shouldn't be any excuse. Now, if I had been there, I would have probably knocked her one, because please, just think about these kids that go home. They leave home early in the morning to get to school. Their moms leave earlier from the informal settlements to get to work. They have to get up, make sure that other children are dressed. We all go to school together. We come back. I have to cook, etc., etc. And when everything is over, I can sit and learn by candlelight. That's not conducive for anybody, surely. Bullying in schools is bad enough without not having proper clothes. And the latest, what was I saying, Donald Trump gold tackies, which are horrific, but I would really like to buy a pair just for fun. So it's a hard life. So have a look at them. Those are our children. Okay. Social exclusion, discrimination. They continue to face social exclusion from service providers, from staff in public institutions, in shops. There is a perception that the San were often the last in line, and this has not changed much since independence. Now, just think about before independence. You had the two streams, whites only, coloreds only, blacks only, coloreds, whites. What is any different here? What is any different? We're doing exactly the same thing. But now it's just in a different perspective. Now it's more culturally. They are perceived to be lacking in culture. They are uncivilized. They are primitive. We don't know what their traditions are. People see them as backwards. This has a very negative impact on their self-esteem and also contributes to the alcohol abuse that is among the San. And this is a San woman who applied for a job as a cleaner at the local primary school. And this is what they told her. We went to the school asking for the forms to apply. Then the answer from the people came, you are a bushman. How can you clean up your place? How can you become a cleaner of the school? You are dirty and you want to clean up the school. That's what she heard. Now you're telling me you don't want to leave and never come again if somebody says that to you. Access to healthcare. It's hindered, once again, language barriers. There are no concerted efforts to bridge that communication gap. They can't articulate, the San cannot articulate their problems because they speak Afrikaans. And the clinics that they go to, either the sisters there can't or they won't speak Afrikaans. So it's very difficult for them to say, well, this is wrong with me or that is wrong with me. And I spoke to a San woman some years back, and she said, you know, we'll go to the clinic, which only comes around once in a blue moon, and you've paid to get there, first of all, money that you don't have. Many of the San women are also sex workers because of that, in order to make some money. So you pay for that, you get there, and you cannot tell them what is wrong with you. So she said later on she would just like point at her stomach, you know, and it's sore there. And then you get paracetamol, Panado, because there's not normally a lot anyway. And then they leave again. So there's a disconnect, honestly, between what we can provide and what they are getting. Poor nutrition, closely intertwined with poverty and alcohol abuse. Alcohol is a major concern, in particular in the urban areas. It's cheap to fill up on traditional brew. It gives you relief from the realities of your life. And let me tell you quite honestly that if I had to live like that, I would probably drink myself into a stupor every night as well. Imagine in the winter when it's cold. Drinking on an empty stomach increases the effects of the alcohol and has other negative consequences. Poor nutrition, alcohol abuse increases vulnerability to infectious diseases. The San has one of the highest TB, tuberculosis, within Namibia. And this has a significant negative influence on the standard of living of the San. So, pipe smoking is one of the little pleasures. It is shared around and it spreads infectious disease. Land rights, livelihoods. Let me move on. Veldkos is something that the San gather. It is used for food. They use it for medicines. I believe that there is a cure for every ailment in our ecosystems. So the land rights, the access that has been taken away from them is so much more than just a place. I say just, but I don't mean it that way, to live, to build my house on. And if we look at how the San live in some of the, I think the first one is, if I have a look, it's a homestead in Soweto, in Etoshapoort, in Uchu. The bottom one is a dwelling in which most San in Ongamwena live. Dignity. Isn't that wonderful? Okay, so the land that they have been given from government, it doesn't align with their hunter-gatherer lifestyle. It is designed for cattle farming, for the most part. The San don't know how to cattle farm. They don't know how to do crop rotation or crop production or livestock farming. They don't have the funds to purchase what they need. They can't negotiate business deals. I'll pay this, you get that. So the whole program is just set up for disaster. And there's been no assistance from the government in terms of post-resettlement. So, and I think you will know, on the way to Midgard, all those years ago, you had that lovely farm on the one side that had flowers, and actually exported flowers, can you believe it, from our arid country. And that was one of those farms, resettlement places that were given. Drive past there now, there's nothing. because you don't have the information or the knowledge or the ability to do that. Or the capital, exactly. In fact, what I heard, what did Smitty used to say, the people here, but they do not say, is that the people that live there now are actually government workers. And they live there for free and they drive into town every day. So isn't that wonderful? I just wanted to say something, John, about the issue that we spoke about, land dispossession. I think we need to also remember that not everybody actually wants land. You know, we've made this discourse about land, but not everybody actually wants that. So we mustn't forget. What have I done? Okay. We mustn't forget about other pertinent issues as well. People, the land is for them a cultural space. It's their tradition. It's the way that their forefathers have lived. And that's been taken away. Okay, those terrible photos there. The Etosha ancestral land rights dilemma. John, you touched on it, and I'm not going to speak a lot on it because I think, yeah, look at that. I'm not sure who can pronounce that. Oikop, what? Oik. All right, you will find that the waterholes in Etosha, they all have sand names, all of them. But you know what? We can't pronounce it, so we'll just make it Okakuyu. Say? Thank you very much. It reminds me of in the old days when it was still the missionaries and the nuns and so on. And I'm a Catholic from a Catholic school, so I'm having nothing against them. But they came and they said, oh, I can't use this name of yours, so I'll just call you, I don't know, Goodwill. It's exactly that same way, you know. They can't understand it, so it's not worth anything, so we'll go our own way. I mean, there was a gentleman in Windhoek some time back, no names mentioned, who was very upset that names were being changed to traditional names because, my goodness, when my family comes from overseas, how will they know where to find me? So, yeah, I think we still are like that sometimes. In Etosha, the San, they used the whole area from Uchu to Etosha Pan to sustain their hunter-gatherer lifestyle. Etosha is their ancestral land. According to a survey in 2010, 58% of those living in Etosha were born in the park, and they are San people. All the permanent waterholes have San names. This is one of them. So before independence, the San were employed in the park. They were used as guides, general workers, and this was a positive situation because, I mean, come on, we know that we can't just give Etosha back. There's got to be a way in which there will be some restitution or, you know, some funds that come back. And in that time, living there, working there, at least in a small way, it accommodated a semblance of their hunter-gatherer lifestyle. They could visit the graves of their ancestors. There were other spiritual places of significance that they then had access to. There was a link, in a way, between the future and the past, between progress and respect for what we have and for our people. After independence, the San were pushed out of Etosha, and their positions are largely taken over by the Oshiwambu tribes, who have no connections to this land. We have been working on the Etosha ancestral land rights case. I'm sure you may have heard of it. We didn't succeed, but there's reasons for that. We're going to be bringing that again, and we have had extensive conversations, in particular with the San from Etosha, and they are so humiliated by the people that are now in the camp, the Oshiwambu people. They say to them, you are nothing. This is not yours, get out. They're living on the edges of what was once their land. And they get told, what do you want from us? You want nothing. Cultural practices. The government must recognize and rectify the disparity in land allocation to safeguard also the cultural practices of the San. The elders are saying they can't teach their children how to gather veldkos, wild food anymore, because they can't access the land as they used to. So it is very difficult to teach the children maybe the few things that are around. In 10 years, it will just have disappeared because of the fences. Because people just come and grab our land where our food is. You know, I have some concern actually, and I was discussing it with some colleagues, and yeah, it's just my opinion, is that from all the years where there has been this abuse, alcohol abuse, they've been removed from their land, they haven't been able to, I say they, please don't hold it against me, the San haven't been able to practice what they did in the years, you know, that they were on their land. I wonder sometimes if they are not at some stage going to lose that. They are not at some stage going to lose that cultural understanding and the way in which they will be able to show their children. And isn't that a big shame, really? And then you're going to get books, and people are going to go and say, oh, come, we're going to do this now, and we're going to collect that now. That's not right. And it's of big concern, and I think we're going there a lot quicker than what we think we are. Okay, so then we're going to move on to something else. About 2 or 3 months ago, I was invited to Geneva to go to a session of the Human Rights Committee. Now, the government is a signatory to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and every 4 years, they have to go there and they have to stand up for what has been done in terms of that covenant. So they need to explain, okay, now there's rights to indigenous peoples, what have you done, this is what we've heard. Now, I was invited to attend this because I was going to give the point of view of civil society. So very often you will find the government will say, well, you know, we've got all the laws in place, and by goodness we do. We have wonderful laws, but implementation. So you go there and you say, oh, you know, we have the laws in place, so what? You don't do anything with it. We are the most unequal society, second in line, you know, so what are you doing? Well done. I don't want to be compared with other countries in Africa, or in the world really. I want us to be the beacon. Compare it with our constitution and with ourselves. The delegation in Geneva from the government, and it's funny because we're such a small community that, I mean, I know the AG personally, we used to work together, and there he was, hi Toni, you know, apparently I don't age, he said. And it's strange because on the one hand, you're telling them off, and on the other hand, I mean, I don't have an issue, and they don't have an issue with me. But at that event, I was also told by one of them, don't attack us too much, you know, we're much better than the other countries. Yeah, we are. Big deal at the end of the day. The concluding observations of the committee included a reference to the rights of indigenous peoples. Now, the concluding observations are the ones in which, in general, they will have to report upon under the next progress report. And it says there that the state party should consider recognizing the communities such as the San, the Himba, etc., as indigenous peoples with rights recognized in international standards such as the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Now, why that is important is because Namibia refuses to refer to the San and others as indigenous peoples. They say we are all indigenous peoples, and that the San are marginalized. Now, that is of concern because there are specific rights that are given to indigenous peoples in terms of, you know, this covenant and the state parties, the observations of the HR committee, etc. So they then are not covered by that, and that is why it is of concern. Now I'm going to move on to something else. I'm not going to be much longer. Extractive industries. And by the way, I've put a whole lot of books out there for anybody that wants them. A lot of it speaks to the extractive industries, oil and gas, etc. It's stuff that we've done under another donor. It concerns me. There's a dichotomy from the benefits of the extractive industries vis-à-vis the associated adverse environmental and social problems. And they fall largely on indigenous people and local communities. You spoke about the Sperrgebiet. There should be no need nor any desire to exclude these communities in matters that concern them directly, especially if the project is intended to enhance sustainable development, which should be the government's purview. I'm not speaking against progress, if it is managed respecting human rights and the environment. And we need to be very conscious of the so-called resource curse, which, if you look at countries that have got oil, etc., what has happened there? The resource curse. It hasn't done any good for the people that need it. So progress is good. Do it properly. Okay, extractive industries. No one protects a thing better than its owner. So from the very beginning, you need to ensure meaningful participation, engagement of local communities, safeguard their rights, and maximize the benefits of the sector. If a community feels protected, it will protect its project. So in order to, from the very beginning, work with communities, get their consent, and even if not, at least go through the process of having them understand what it is and why the balance should be in terms of progress. We need to go through those things. Not just at the end of the day say, well, this is going to happen and wow, we're all going to make a lot of money. I'm not so sure. And I'm not sure who's going to get that money. Free, prior, and informed consultation. We spoke about it a little bit earlier. This is the yardstick for when any land or so is being utilized by any other entity, and that land belongs either to the indigenous peoples or to the marginalized or to the people that are living in that environment. So free, no coercion. It shouldn't be an afterthought. We've had that already where one of the mining companies, and I really can't remember which one because I'm happy to say it, said, put it in the newspaper like 3 days, oh, we're going to have a community meeting. Thank you very much. I don't even know what the project is about. So how do I even get there? You know, informed. Newspapers, many communities don't have access. Many communities cannot read in that language. They don't understand. I don't understand. If I read some of the stuff from Hyphen and those places, I'm like, what are these people talking about? No clue. I don't know how green hydrogen works. People will say, yeah, it's fine, it's good for us, but they don't look at the environmental issues. You know, the skeleton coast. They want to do, what is it called? What are those cities called where everything happens on a smart city? A smart city. Nothing will happen, we'll just make the road through. Nothing will touch anything, that's a skeleton coast, and we'll have the smart city and all will be well. Guess what? It won't be. I'm not sure what I all have here, I'm now getting all excited here. Full and accurate disclosure of information. You know, we need to, it's very important for me also, on top of all of this, that the kind of information that is given should be sensitive and culturally unbiased, if I can put it that way. Not everybody understands things the same way. First of all, the language is a barrier, but more than that, the nuances in the language can be a barrier. And you know, I think about what happened to me. I always try and figure it out within myself, how these things happen. I was at an event some time back, and somebody came and they offered me a piece of cake, and it was their home. And normally I will never say no to cake. I mean, cake is my favorite food. And I didn't want any cake, so I said, no, thank you very much. And I was pulled aside later by someone and said, you know what? You have actually insulted that person. And I had no clue, you know? So it's very important that we look at the conversations, how we are having those conversations. Namibia is a patriarchal, there's many patriarchal systems in our country still. What things matter to different groups? How are certain things articulated? What does it mean for that person? How does it affect their life? You know, so we need to be very, very conscious of those things when we are doing the free, prior, and informed consultation. Informed being a very specific word there. I'm not even sure where I am now. Okay, that's community involvement. Why is it important? I think we've just discussed all of that. Transparency, accountability, legitimacy, help to address social and environmental concerns, and then it is flawed because why? Sufficient information is not forthcoming. It's a once-off consultative meeting that does not allow for meaningful dialogue. We know that very often we will have members of different parties coming to see communities and just saying, do you know what, you should actually be happy because, you know, there's peace here. And this is what we're going to do for you guys now. And okay, fine, you know, what am I going to do about it? Those once-off meetings, they're not consultative. They're just coming to tell you something. And this is what we're going to do, and you better be grateful because we freed the country. Traditional authorities, they come under the Traditional Authorities Act. So while they are supposed to be independent, they are essentially mostly not. They are appointed by government. So, and this is another issue that we could talk about for hours, is that the traditional authorities are supposed to speak on behalf of their traditional communities. But some communities don't have traditional authorities, so they get subsumed underneath others that don't speak for them. And you know, these traditional authorities also get a bit of assistance from government, or they might get a little bit of a little place here, or maybe they get, at every Christmas they get a packet of, I don't know, but there can be something like that there. So you have to remember cultural nuances. You have to remember and think about whether the people that you want to be speaking to are actually there. Okay, what is next? Basic income grant. Where is... Hello? Bishop, hello. The basic income grant. We did that together a very, very long time ago. The basic income grant, I'm sure, I hope that you have heard about it. There's a couple of issues here that I would like to address very shortly. Is that I think people don't understand the concept. And I'm not for one moment telling you that from a financial point of view, I understand how it works either. But there has been an experiment done, a very small scale one, but it did show that the basic income grant, or BIG, or BIG, what was it, the Big Friendly Giant? No, he was the BFG. That it can actually work, and it makes a difference. Not everybody uses that money for good, believe me. Yes, some people did drink it out. Just like in our society, that happens too. But some didn't. Some started making clothes with that money and selling it. Sending their children to school, making vet cook and selling it. So there were things that they were doing. It was positive. The concern, positive, I say it's universal, but it's also a concern for people because people can't understand. If I say, okay, everyone in this room is going to get $500 a month. Immediately, why must you get 500? You're living here in Ludwigsdorf, or, you know, I don't know what the place is called here. And this poor person doesn't have, so it's fine for them. But the whole idea is it's supposed to work on your taxation levels. So if you are earning $5,000 a month, there's a scale there. Yes, you get the 500, but you will be taxed 500. So you kind of stay the same level, whereas the person that earns less will obviously then benefit from it. And the person that earns a lot more will be giving more, all right? The concern there is taxable income. We can't even do it now. So that really has to be done very, very well, to be mindful of it, to make sure that everything is working at the Ministry of Finance. Try and go down there at the moment and actually set up your online system. Good luck.
Sorry to interrupt. Is it Oshimeno or Omitara?
It was Oshivero? Okay, I'm sorry if it was. Oshivero, yeah, I haven't spelled it. Yes, sorry, my spelling. Okay, so taxable income, it has to work. That has to work. Otherwise, this whole thing from the very beginning, the idea is not to have this administrative burden where people are going and saying, okay, how much do you earn? Where do you get it from? How are you going to use it? Blah, blah, and all of that. That takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of money from the government. So if you have a universal one, you don't have any of those things. And I'm saying to you, this is a very difficult thing to do. I'm not suggesting that it's easy, but it can work. And we should be striving towards it. And I think also, you know, when you are in your communities, in your friends, families, and that, put it out there so that people understand. Because immediately, if you say basic income grant for everybody, then they'll be like, no. Why must those people get? Why must they get? Because they don't understand how it's supposed to work. So please do be aware of that. Explain, show, and provide. I think I'm close to the end. Some years back, 2001, 11 years after Namibia became independent, the LAC published a comprehensive study report compiled by a James Suzman. And that is what he said after everything. A decade after independence, the San stand out due to their dependency, extreme poverty, political alienation, and a variety of social, educational, and health problems. Of course, these problems are not unique to the San, and many other Namibians are just as poor and marginalized as they are. However, what makes San conspicuous among Namibia's poor is the fact that while only a proportion of the members of each other language group are extremely poor, the San are almost universally extremely poor. Has anything changed, really? I don't think so. And then, please go online on our website. There's lots of stuff there you can get for free. Consider putting us in your will. And this final slide is for my dear friend, Mr. Nakuta. I'm still going to put it on. Sometime back we had another, not a symposium, you spoke at some other event. And without my permission, he put my face on there. So, payback time. I got a nice one. There was worse. Thank you. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Toni Hancox. This was insightful. It was emotional. It grabbed us by our hearts, I think, not by our brains. We would very much like to pose some questions, and in the meantime, I would also like to invite the digital community out there at YouTube and the online channel Zoom to please pose questions in our chat groups so that Ms. Hancox can also answer those. And then I would like to encourage you to ask some questions. The microphone will again be carried by Pastor Tietz, and Pastor Tietz, there are already some hands over there. It must be via the microphone, otherwise our digital listeners can't hear you.
Yeah. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for a lovely presentation, Toni. The first question is, this talks to minorities, but then maybe we should look at what is the definition of a minority, because in Namibia, I believe there are so many minorities. I know the San could be minority of the minorities, but there are so many Namibian minorities that are there. So I'd like to see the definition. Does it not leave out other minorities? Because apart from the Abambo people that are the largest group, the German-speaking Namibians are minorities. The Herero are minorities. The African-speaking minority. So maybe we should find a definition that specifies. I did understand what you were saying about. Can you hear?
Yes, I can. I'm telling Johnny must Google.
Yeah. So that's the question that I had. The other question that I was trying to understand is, when we say that the San are the minority and we don't mention lots of others as a minority, do we not fall into this place that saying that because the suffering of the San are much worse than that of the Herero or the Damara, therefore we neglect the fact that they should be defined as minority and in a process condone discrimination, because we know that discrimination happens in tenders, in scholarships, in job opportunities and all of those, and often the victims of those are lots of minorities. Thank you.
Do you want me to respond to that now?
Yes, please do. Sometimes when there are many questions, we can bundle them together. My experience is that you usually lose track of the content of the question, so please go ahead.
No, that's fine. I was asking John to Google the definition of minority. I don't know if he actually did, but that was the idea. Yes, you're right. Of course, there are different groups. There are different minorities. I guess the difference with the San is they are the minority, as you said, of the minorities. They have the least. Also, they are indigenous. And I know that the government has previously said that we are all indigenous. We do not believe that to be true. We do believe that the San are the first peoples of this country. So yes, there are many different minorities, but we have to look at who's getting what. You know, I can't remember whether it was my daughter or something that was telling me about, they were trying to explain equity and equality and so on, because people are always saying, you know what, we all have education now, what's the big deal? The big deal is that cycle continues. I had a good education. My children had a good education. Lissima, who brought up my children, didn't have a good education. As much as we've tried, her children are not, when does that end? I don't know when that ends or if it ever ends. But what she was saying is that my daughter was telling me the chap that did their PE went on to, they was asking about this, and he said, you know what, if the children are playing in the field and one of them falls and bleeds, I'm going to come with a plaster and put it on the one that is bleeding and not on everybody. So maybe we can look at it from that point of view, that the San, as indigenous people, are perhaps bleeding a bit more than the other minorities.
We have a next question. Sorry, next one.
Thank you very much. I've learned a lot. But I want just to ask a question. The minorities, are they going to stay minorities forever? Or do we want them also, or to see them as Namibians? And perhaps help them in such a way that they are regarded as Namibians and not only as minorities. When it comes to indigenous and culture and so, we are all that. But I think what we want is that we want to be Namibians in our Namibian country. We were talking of the San But we can talk of the Germans also, the German-speaking people. They are also a minority. Do we want them to be seen forever as minorities, but to be seen as Namibians and address their needs as much as possible? Thank you.
Would you like to answer that?
No, I don't want them to. I don't think if you look at what a minority means in terms of a negative context, no, I don't want anybody to stay a minority. I mean, let's be honest, in terms of German minorities and so on, yes, you are a minority, but you don't fall under the same scale as what the San people do. And I don't believe, I have to disagree with you, Bishop, we are not all indigenous. I don't believe that at all. Yes, we should all be Namibians, absolutely, Namibians first, but if we say we want to help them become that, yes, I agree with all of that, I really do. But at this point in time, it is not so. So we want to help, but there is no help coming out, that's the point. So I'm agreeing with you, we should be doing more so that we can all share in the Namibian house.
We had a question over there, Dr. Schneider. It was first Dr. Schneider.
Yes, thank you, Toni. I'm working for the Desert Research Foundation of Namibia, and we have a very strong and long relationship with sound communities in the Omaheke region. My question would be, have you ever come across the expression of resettlement farms? We have a Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Rural Development, and they have an own directorate called Directorate of Resettlement. Now, I have seen those places where sound communities were dumped, literally dumped, and I've seen, and I still see it, misery, hunger, and malnutrition, everything you mentioned, but maybe if you are able to dwell a bit on the concept of resettlement farms.
Like I did mention earlier on that, yeah, they don't get given any assistance in terms of that. But I think that the whole concept of resettlement, you have to think it through properly. It's not just a matter of, shame, we're going to give you that piece of land now. And then, you know, I think what people also don't realize is that a lot of Namibian, well, I'm sure you do, a lot of the land in Namibia is not habitable or is not for that kind of thing where you can, I mean, you can't just grow, you know, farm produce and so on. Even if you could, with what our arid deserts and that are like, even if you could, try and grow stuff at home, okay? My husband is doing a vegetable garden. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So, you know, there needs to be assistance with it. I don't think the concept of a resettlement farm, in fact, I don't like the term because I think it's a little bit disrespectful. But I guess if it worked properly, if you could give people an opportunity to learn and to live and place them in a situation where there is healthcare, where there is education, etc., like a little, yes, then it can work. Absolutely, I hope it will. But it's not working now.
Thank you very much. Next one was Harald Hecht, I think, was it?
Okay, quickly, more comment from my side once again. I think as German-speaking Namibians, we need to be mindful of the following fact. Whenever statistics are being published on the quality of life that people are enjoying in Namibia, the German-speaking Namibians always end up on top of that statistic. That has been unchanged. And I'm the first one to admit that I've been privileged growing up as a German-speaking Namibian, and we should be applying more humility in this topic. We engaged, quickly, I like the fact that Article 8 respects the human dignity. The German Grundgesetz also has got a provision that die Würde des Menschen ist unantastbar. The dignity of people shouldn't be touched. I think we are losing the dignity of our people. I mentioned it in my address this morning. And we should look at measures that can solve this thing, at least in the short term. And we invited Herbert Jauch, who's a big proponent on the basic income grant, to a panel discussion in August 2022 at the Goethe Institute. And I would just really like to echo what Toni said and encourage our German-speaking members, they're all German-speaking, our members of our forum, to really think about this one. We are losing the dignity of our people. we have to stop the blood loss that these people are experiencing. And then maybe after 10 years, we've modified our education sectors again, and you can maybe look at the sunset clause, but at least for the time being, the big basic income grant, das bedingungslose Grundeinkommen, would really be a step in the right direction. Listen to Herbert Jauch. Maybe we should have another platform where we discuss this whole thing, but he convinced me on that evening, people can afford, when they did the experiment on the basic income grant, people could afford to go to clinics. People could afford to buy sewing machines and make their own clothes. People were in a position to do the basic things, pay for school fees and things like that. So that is really something to lose. And then the second thing that we should also be considering is that in today's modern world, if you don't have access to Wi-Fi, to online, you are losing out. So that is also something that we need to get into the poorer communities and the marginalized communities, is the access to Wi-Fi. So really, I would like to sensitize my colleagues in the forum. Let's think big.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Harald Hecht. Pastor Tietz is running around with the microphone. Sorry, Toni.
Before you continue with that,
To the microphone, please.
okay, it's actually not so bad. I don't have to say much. John asked if I would mind if he would further clarify the difference between indigenous and minority rights. Please do, and don't embarrass me too much. Okay.
Is John Nakuta
Do you want
the
to
next
do that
person?
first?
Okay. If John Nakuta quickly clarifies the difference between indigenous and minority.
Yeah, it's actually a very important question. As law is, everything has a specific meaning. In law, human rights law that is, when we speak about minorities, minority groups would include women, would include the LGBTI community. In certain countries, language groups, as we've mentioned, religious groups, migrant refugees. In human rights law, these people are referred to as minorities. And of course, there are overlaps. But when we come to indigenous people, all over the world where there are indigenous people, like in our case, the Ovahimbas, the San, and whatever, and you go to wherever, Australian, whatever, these are the people that are normally much more poorer than the poorest. And for that reason, international human rights law make a distinction between minority rights and indigenous people's rights. Yep. And Toni is right, the African Commission of Human and People's Rights said, in as much as we're all blacks, black Africans are indigenous to Africa, but indigenous people are very unique in terms of those people that suffer much more disproportionate discrimination, and they are normally having a very specific connection to the land. So we make a distinction between minority rights and indigenous people's rights.
I once read that indigenous peoples means they have no direct political representation. Yeah. Okay, next question. That is Mr.
Yeah, thank you very much, because that was going to be actually my question now. Please clarify a bit more about distinction between minority and indigenous. I just briefly want to make a comment around, Toni, you mentioned something really important, public participation. And we see this as well, that a lot of acts and laws in Namibia make provisions for some sort of consultation method, or you know, a stipulation for consultations with the wider public or stakeholders. And that I find very important. It's very good that we have that. But of course, we don't have a set what that actually means, or my understanding is the law doesn't, there isn't a clear definition of what that should entail. I know internationally and academia has various methods or models, but often here you find in this country that, you know, government as well as private sector often get away with these kind of information sessions, and then we sell them to the public as actually having in-deep proper consultations, while this is not the case. And maybe we can just have a bit of a, just keep that in mind and have sort of a thought around what we actually mean by proper consultations.
Yeah, you're right. And I think we should get it out there more and really put it out into the public sphere, in particular when you are having issues where there must be consultations. And you know, when we do what is called shadow reports, when I'm speaking about the reports that are done by the government to the different international bodies, very often they want our input, or we'll do a shadow report, and then they'll say, okay, fine, on this day, 5 days in the future, or even day after tomorrow, we are having this session, and we are inviting you to provide input into this document. And how can I provide input into this document? I need to really go through it, consider it, have a look to see what I would say in my shadow report, etc. So you say no, you're not going to go. And it's the worst of both worlds for us, because if you go, then the government will say, civil society was there, so what do they want to come and say now? And if you don't go, then they'll say, we invited them and they didn't come. So once again, you know, consultation.
Next question.
Thank you very much, all of you, Toni, and the other contributors. It's been very interesting, but quite frankly, to me, it's also very depressing, what we've heard this afternoon. But to lighten up this rather depressing news, I'd like to share with you briefly, allow me, 3 examples of positivity, of involvement of German-speaking Namibians. The first one is Noma Safari Camp. It now belongs to the partner of my brother's oldest son. It's northwest of Sumkwe, not far away from Aasvoornes. This is also a San community. They're involved. She's a qualified fashion designer. She started making the traditional San sandals with very good materials, leather, and a little more, if I am allowed to say, sexy, and they sell very successfully in the UK. So the people have an income, and it uplifts, obviously, them. Second very positive example is the late farmer, Mr. Tolkien. He founded on his property, on his farm, Quina. It's in the Epokira area, a school for San people, which gets, obviously, support from Germany. Very successful. And the third example, the oldest one I know, is the Ombili Foundation. Ombili is a farm that belonged to Mr. Mais Rishi. Unfortunately, he also died. It's still today used exclusively for the San community that is north of Tsumeb, almost bordering on the what we call the red line, the veterinary cordon fence. Just to share with you these at least 3 very positive examples. But there is one reason that wasn't mentioned here, and I think that is important for the ostracization, is that the right word? Ostracization of some of the San people. Okay. Those of you who are knowledgeable of the pre-independence war in the north, the South African army used San trackers, because, or spoorsnijers as they called in Afrikaans, because their exceptional knowledge.
I did mention that, yeah.
And of tracking, reading tracks, and ultimately tracking down the Swapo guerrillas, having mostly come in from Angola. And of course that...
Yes, no, I did mention that. And in fact, a percentage of the San people after the war actually went to South Africa because they were scared of retribution.
Thank you very much. We have another question over there, or an intervention. Yes, please. Your microphone is not on. We're just replacing the batteries. Our online community, please bear with us.
I can sing. I love karaoke. You not, if I've got a microphone in my hand.
I would have a question to you later.
Yes.
Since we're talking about minority rights, we're always saying fight for your rights, and you should give us some indication of how we can fight for rights.
I was thinking about earlier on, sorry, John was talking about, he had photos there of black women, you know, that were in positions of power or CEOs or whatever. So I think you and me and the other two speakers should come and sit here and see what you can say there. I'm the minority, not the majority. Aha.
Correct. Now we can
Well,
go
more or
on to
less, we are
questions.
all minorities because everybody is special in his or her own way. Let's say it like that. No, just a very negative statement now about this basic income. We heard this bedingungslose Grundeinkommen in Germany. In German, well, it was tried out several times throughout this world. Last time in Italy, and it failed. It failed completely every time it was tried out. It's tried out in Finland. Currently, it's tried out in Germany on a very high level, as we call it the Bürgergeld. But it leads mostly to that the people who get it, they settle in their situation. They settle within the situation. It leads to giving up. If the bedingungslose Grundeinkommen is low, then the people are subsidized on a low level, and it deprives the people of any energy to change their situation. Lots of them are giving up, and it leads to a kind of, we say in German, as very negative, the Bodensatz in a society. It leads to a certain a group of people that just are then confident with what they have because they don't see any other future for themselves, and they don't give up with any other effort to change the situation. That's the effect of the basic income. That's really like this. It was tried out several times throughout this world. And towards the San, as you said, well, it reminds me of the Aborigines in Australia. It's a very same situation. Indigenous people, well, living there and being trapped into their situation. And in Australia, there have been multiple efforts to change this. And so far as I know, but please teach me better, everything failed. But if we think of maybe changing the situation of the San here, we should maybe take into account that in Australia the Aborigine problem was the same. And I don't want to blame the San people. Somebody said very perfectly before, it's addressing their needs. Every time when we speak about a minority or about indigenous people, we speak about them from our kind of, quote, high point of view, from our understanding of society. And then we think, okay, we have to teach them to get into our thinking, to achieve our kind of society. But maybe they can't. Maybe they will, maybe they can't, maybe they won't, because their thinking or their needs may be different from all the needs we are even able to understand. Thank you.
Would you agree?
If I can respond to that very quickly. Toivo,
Please do.
now. On the one hand, yes, I agree. I know that it has been, the BIG has been utilized, has been tried in different countries. They failed in certain positions, yes, but there's context to everything. And to say that if you have money, if you get money, what is it in Germany, they say the Hartz-IV or whatever, if you get that money and you're going to sit back and do nothing, I'm not saying that some people won't do that. But in this time here, the San have absolutely nothing. So even if they had that $200 a month or whatever it is, I don't believe that they will sit on their laurels. And some of them will, you know, but it's worth a try. We're a very small population. So that also has to be taken into account. And it's about respect for me as well. And in terms of maybe they don't want, maybe the San don't want us. Do you know, I actually said to somebody a while back, you know, everyone's like, oh, but we've given them westernized dinges and whatever. And I always say, well, maybe the African way was a lot better. Why didn't you learn from us? You know, so yes, there is a disconnect. And I would not for 1 minute say that they need to take over Western value. No, that's not the case. That is exactly the opposite. They need to be able to be who they are within the stratosphere.
Thank you very much, Toivo. You're
Yeah.
next. Oh, there are many. Pastor Keats will hand around the microphone.
Yeah.
Toivo is first.
Thank you. Yeah, so my question to you, Toni, is really what I think is a structural, cultural issue regarding the San in particular. You were talking about Article 19 there, that talks about the protection of cultures and traditions and stuff like that. And we have people, there's also this accusation of, is it cultural appropriation or is it misappropriation, where these people are perceived to be nomadic, meaning that not only did they live from place to place, but they also ate animals, which we must protect. They can't farm. It's not their thing. I suppose there are efforts to get them to do these things, but it's really not who they are. I mean, what must we do now? John spoke about Etosha, where they lived and they thrived there. Now they've been kicked out. We are forcing them to plow with cattle and stuff like that, and it's not working. How do we balance that situation?
Toni, just shortly, I'm getting signals that we must be careful with time now. So I'll allow 3 more. Is that correct? 3 more, and that's it then, and Toni will answer.
Someone's on, I don't know if
and then we'll ask whether somebody is in the chat group, yes.
Yeah. However,
good afternoon, everyone. My name is Luisa Kativa, the Regional Councillor of the Swakopmund constituency. I just want to touch a bit on the San community, and let me say for San of Atwe, of Ahimba, and all those. My point of view, point of corrections, these people, they lack of education. Education in terms of, like the master say, people, they were living like, they live on demanding on the wild animals. That was their cultures. So for them to remove them from their culture, bring them to this side, they never be educated on which platform they must live their lives. They will be like, just throw it there. Okay, you are no more living in Etosha, you are going to live in the other life, but we never be educated them. So it seems like even many of people, they support them, they say, unfortunately now we were donating them what, and they never use it on that. They don't have any idea of what they were received, what they're supposed to keep it or whatsoever, because their life, it was like to live here today and tomorrow. If that animals they kill on that area, they finish to eat it, they're supposed to leave another area again, moving around the whole entire Namibians. So I hope it's like Dr. Gameta here say that we are very good on identifying the problem of the community or whatsoever, but then we lack also actions. So in such of this community who are not aware about the Bahimba or Vatwe or Vachimba, many of us, we are aware and what is their challenges. But what was the action was be taken to this community? This is the water. They are still drinking water from the ponds. Those water, they used to be like greenish, living there sometimes when the rain driving, or sometimes they dig with their hands, and those kind of things. Food security are also among of this community of them. But now, on top of this community we have, ourselves also people, other community are coming. We were having a case here for Okayova, 16 people. What was the cost of that death? It was 16. It was cost of the food security. People, they eat food which is apparently have poison. But unfortunately, if a person getting food every time, when you test that food, you might identify that, no, this food is not correctly. Why did the 16 people be evicted? Because they don't have even knowledge to say this food supposed to be in which category so that we can be eat. That was only my contribution. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Will you be able to respond to both those questions,
Yeah,
please,
well,
Toni?
the one was really just a contribution.
An intervention, yes.
And I 100% agree with you, madam. I think the challenge is exactly what are we going to do about it? So maybe we should give some thought to that. Toivo, I hear what you're saying. There's a balance. Fortunately, unfortunately, we've become westernized. Yes, okay, it can't be as in the days of yore. You know, if I think back to that stupid film, The Gods Must Be Crazy. I mean, seriously, do you remember that film? Anyway, there must be a balance. And I think in human rights, we always say, where your right ends, mine begins. So I'm not for 1 minute saying it's going to be easy. It's going to be about accommodating what is the rights of people. And at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, they've got first call, you know, because it is their land.
We have one more, Pastor Tietz, or two? Or was it two? Okay, two, and then it's
Yeah, I just
how
want
do they
to
say kaput?
I just want to be controversial now and think in another way. Why not allow the San people to hunt in Etosha Pan again, collect their meat, move from place to place, and somehow introduce them into tourism to get an income? Not like an animal to be watched, but a traditional minority, how they live, what they do. And I think with the income, they have a better chance to send their children to education. So, I mean, wouldn't it be an interesting thing for Etosha Pan where tourists say, oh, we have indigenous people there that still hunt like in the old days? You might get some people that say, oh, you want to leave them in their old ways. What? Do not everybody has a right of free association? And so if they want to, why not allow it? Why don't we give them a license to hunt in Etosha Pan? We've got many animals there.
Yeah,
Just
I agree.
an idea.
And I mean, that's how it was to a certain extent before independence. You know, the San stayed there, they worked there, they lived there, it was their place. So I think that you're right, and obviously in terms of we have to be careful because of the poaching that's been happening, etc. But it's something that could be better controlled. I know sometimes people say, you know, like with the Ovaimba women and that, they'll say, it's actually for me almost like you're looking, like you, I don't know how to put this, that it's not offensive, but it's like, you know, you go to a place and you look at all these different things and you're like, wow, you know, whatever it is. And I think some people feel it's like disrespectful, you know, if you're showing me how the people of yore used to live and do that, and why are you looking at me like I'm something out of another dimension? But obviously, if the San are willing to do that, and I know it is done in some other places, in some other farms or whatever they do it, if they are willing and if it's done respectfully, I don't see why not. I would like to learn.
Okay, that's Patrick Yaoto. Please go ahead.
Yeah, mine is just to add what my previous, what Andrea said. I think in America, the Indians, they have shares in casinos, which is law. And am I correct? The Indians in America, they have shares in casinos, where they always get a certain amount of money, which is actually a law. And if the San people can have something like that in tourism as a law, then I think it would help. It's just an idea. Exactly what you are saying. If that can be made as a law, and they can benefit from it and shares in Etosha.
What kind of a levy?
I think you are overreaching, but it would be good if we got a declaration from here to this is what we believe, this is what this community believes should happen. So I challenge you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really pleased that we're ending with some suggestions to make life easier for this particular minority in Namibia. Monica, do we have reactions from our chat groups? No.
How dare they? They've all gone to lie down somewhere. Idiots.
Well, I say thank you very, very much, Toni Hancox, for this. It was lively. As I said, it spoke to our hearts.
Good.
Nicht so viele, sagen wir mal 100.000 mit den verschiedenen Gruppen oder sowas. Müsste ich googeln. Müsste ich eben googeln.
Nur das Mikrofon aufladen.